Good morning. Welcome to the Science of Mind class. I'm so happy to be sitting here with you, with Richard and with Ryan, and being back with our time together for the Science of Mind class. Huge thank you to Tracy Brown for being my favorite person to be with you when I'm not able to be here. I know she's done a miraculous job with you guys, and I so appreciate it. Having just gotten back from our time away, I'm happy to dive back in again with you. We're starting chapter 14 in the Science of Mind on physical perfection. And to start out with, there's a few things I want us to talk about and think about. So the very first thing is that in the Science of Mind, Ernest Holmes, as he was sharing his ideas about what the Science of Mind is about, and as the organization developed, he would often say, we are a healing and teaching order. We're not a preaching order. We're a healing and a teaching order. We teach principles, we teach people how to think, we teach people how to examine themselves and their lives and the life around us. We teach people universal principles and what that means about the truth of who we are. And we believe and teach that we can heal ourselves, our lives, physically, mentally, emotionally, and in every other way. And that our spiritual principles and our spiritual practices should result in healing and changed conditions and manifestations. But all of New Thought is fundamentally predicated on the idea that prayer heals. And not just any prayer, but specific affirmative thinking, specific affirmative belief, a specific affirmative realization of the spiritual truth results in physical healing. We have countless demonstrations of this. Myrtle Fillmore healed herself of tuberculosis. Charles Fillmore actually grew a leg that was too short in his adult life. Myrtle and Charles Fillmore started Unity Church of Christianity, which is now called Unity, and Melinda Kramer and Nona Brooks healed themselves, and they started Divine Science, which is also a New Thought community, set of communities. Ernest Holmes did the same. When he first started, the very first thing he had was a sanatorium, which is what they called places where people went for healing beyond the medical doctors or the hospital. And countless demonstrations of healings, emotional healings, mental healings, and out physical healings. Ernest Holmes, in the Science of Mind, decided that if we could heal our physical bodies, we could apply these principles practically to every area of our life in a very practical, positive spirituality. That we could not only heal our bodies, but we could change the conditions of our life. And so the Science of Mind broadens that idea that we are co-creating all of our life, not just the fact that we can physically heal. This goes directly back into the teachings of Jesus and the teachings of Hinduism. From Hinduism, we get the law of cause and effect and how that works. And from the teachings of Jesus, we get examples of what it means to align ourselves with spiritual principle to, 1, demonstrate, change conditions, 2, and 3, create and experience physical healings. We take this very seriously. And I personally have participated in and experienced physical healings from using the universal laws and principles. Science of Mind does not have a corner on these universal laws and principles. We just spend a lot of time focusing on them, trying to understand them, trying to give language to them, and trying to learn how to practically apply them. I think one of the things that has happened in the last 30 to 40 years in the New Thought movement and in Science of Mind is that we have decided that oftentimes healing is simply a change in perspective rather than an out-and-out change of condition. We do, in fact, expect a healing, a physical demonstrable healing that registers on a test, on an x-ray, on an MRI. It's not just, oh, I feel better about it, or I change my perspective and I know that somehow spirit is, it's perilously close to that whole will of God thing. No, we actually expect the healing. So this chapter and the whole next chapter talks about physical perfection and the use of the spiritual mind treatment that we've been talking about for months, specifically on the healing of the physical body. Now, there are some challenges with this. The first one, before we dive into it, the first one is that people can start to beat themselves up or beat each other up for actually getting sick or for having some physical ailment that then needs to be healed. Like, well, what was in your consciousness that created that? Okay, so we don't do that. We don't do that, and we don't go there. There's the ability to take responsibility without shame or blame is paramount. What we take responsibility for is what we're going to do now with it, how we're going to apply our spiritual tools to it, as opposed to how did I create this? Shame and blame have no place in physical healing. No place, neither for ourselves or for anybody else. The other thing that I've experienced or seen is that people think that if I can't heal it spiritually through spiritual mind treatment, then there must be something wrong with me. I must not understand the principles. I must not be using them right. There must be something wrong. Or, unfortunately, quite frankly, well, this just doesn't work. So I want to start out with some chapters that are on the second page 191 of Physical Perfection. This is the third paragraph. As the laws of God are broad, so should we be in dealing with them. In this science, we believe that our life is a drama which takes place on three planes: the physical, the mental, and the spiritual. We should have no objection to any form of healing, for anything that helps to overcome suffering is good, whether it is a pill or a prayer. We believe in any method which produces results, for each has its place in the whole. Now, I myself personally, I do a lot of alternative medicine, but I'll tell you, Western medicine, allopathic medicine, without that, my son and I would be dead. We would have died in childbirth. And so there is a place for surgery, there's a place for medication, there's a place for therapy, there's a place for Reiki healing, there's a place for energy and supplements and all of the ways in which we engage physically, emotionally, and mentally with our wholeness, our state of being. What we do in the science of mind is we add to it the spiritual aspect of it, because we differentiate between a healing and a cure. Let me say that again. We differentiate between a healing and a cure. Now, we can cure ailments. And how many of us personally ourselves have experienced this or have watched other people cure one thing after another, after another, after another? And that can be one headache after another, after another, after another. Each one gets cured, which means it goes away, but it comes back and it comes back and it comes back. Or, quite frankly, what often happens is one thing gets cured by a doctor and something different shows up. A healing is a move into the state of wholeness where the reoccurrence or the moving around of symptoms and actual illnesses actually stops because there's no place for them anymore in someone's consciousness and therefore in someone's life. And so we can cure things on the physical, mental, and emotional levels while we're doing the spiritual work of healing any underlying false belief, sense of separation, or simply unconscious acceptance that disease is actually possible, that people actually get diseases, that we live in such a crazy world that we might actually get something, right? And we don't even create it. We simply allow it because we're not keeping it out. So our spiritual work is the activity of creating a whole person healing, which also, of course, cures whatever the issues are, but keeps them from returning in some other way. So I want to say again, we should have no objection to any form of healing. For anything that helps to overcome suffering is good, whether it is a pill or a prayer or any other kind of physical, emotional, or mental process. And in the book Living the Science of Mind, there's a whole chapter that is written that is called The Metaphysician Works with the Doctor and the Psychologist. Because we are spirit, soul, and body. We are spirit, psyche, and body. And so when the metaphysician, spirit, the therapist, psyche, and the doctor, body, are all working together, wow, I mean, that's an unbeatable combination. So we're going to set aside anything that says, well, I shouldn't have surgery and I shouldn't take my medicine and I shouldn't go to the doctor because somehow that's not spiritual. We're going to recognize that our spiritual work works in tandem. Sometimes we actually can heal purely with the spiritual work. We are, however, inundated with a fact-based scientific society, and we are bombarded with the idea that you have to take something to get better. And unless we are extraordinarily diligent about healing our sense of separation and our belief in physicality, the way it's being promoted to us these days, that's going to be playing somewhere in the background, no matter how deeply we believe in our universal principles. So don't fight it. I say do them both and allow it to be a whole healing. So in this work, when we're talking about physical perfection, I will be reminding you over and over and over and over and over again that we don't believe that spiritual healing is the only way to heal, that it's the best way to heal, that there's anything wrong if you don't heal it spiritually, but actually go to the doctor or take supplements or do whatever else needs to be done. Okay, and so this is the second thing. This is the next paragraph. As we believe in every church and all forms of worship, we believe in every church and all forms of worship. Above all, we certainly believe in God, because truth is infinite. It must be continuously unfolding in the consciousness of each of us, and no one will ever have a complete understanding of truth. A complete understanding of truth would be a complete understanding of God, and a complete comprehension of God would be to become God. We know that more light will be given as we use that which we have, and we repudiate any belief which says that all truth has been given by anybody else, or by new thought, or by science of mind, or by some spiritual practitioner who says this is the only thing you need to do or the only thing you should do because this is the truth. We understand that every truth in science, in philosophy, in psychology, in metaphysics, in spirituality, every truth is some part of the truth. And we need all of it to even begin to have an idea of this infinite nature, of the infinite reality. And as we grow in our understanding and grow in our experience, even that will expand. And so we are not going to become superstitious, and we are not going to become arrogant, and we are not going to become blaming and shaming. What we're going to do is take responsibility for our part of the spiritual healing. Our part of the spiritual healing is what we do mentally and spiritually. Right? Our body knows how to heal itself if we'll give it a healing environment. The doctor knows what to prescribe. The alternative healer knows what to do. That is their part. That's all of their parts. Our part is the mental and spiritual part that aligns us with the healing. He goes on to say, we realize that mental healing must also be spiritual healing, for the two cannot be divorced. Mental healing must also be spiritual healing, for the two cannot be divorced. We know that a belief in duality, a belief in a power for good and a power for evil or disease or illness, has helped to destroy us, and the understanding of unity alone will heal us. We seek to realize this unity with God, with the infinite, in our healing work. Every treatment, spiritual healing, must carry with it a realization of this unity, of this oneness, because that's what we're overcoming. We are shifting our sense of identity and the place in which we stand and do our work from a fact, physical, human-based viewpoint to a spiritual viewpoint, which recognizes and understands the universal laws, the universal principles, how they work, how they operate, and who we are in all of that, that we use that every day, constantly. So this is my opening statement about physical healing. We're going to go through this chapter, and it's fabulous. And then the second chapter on physical healing, physical healing continued. There's actually there's wonderful descriptions of how to apply this physical healing to various aspects, treating pain, headaches, treating insanity, treating lung trouble and vision and constipation, and arms and hands, skin, false growths, tumors and cancers, removing complexes and heart trouble, poison and paralysis, asthma and hay fever. Karen and I use these sections all the time when somebody calls us and says, I've had a diagnosis, I'm suffering from this condition, I'm confronted with this, either in my own life or a family member or friend has asked for prayer around it. We go to these sections in here and really look at how can we apply these things and what's the healing process from the spiritual point of view that we want to embody or engage with. So we'll see as we get to that point how much of that we'll dive into, but I want to point you to it, and you can already start familiarizing yourself with it. It's brilliant material. Unlike Louise Hay's work, who has done brilliant work with associating physical symptoms with emotional or mental problems or challenges, right? That the physical symptom is an actual outpicturing of an emotional or mental issue that needs to be healed. In the science of mind, we actually move directly to the spiritual truth. We bypass that part because that's not our part to do in the spiritual healing. In the spiritual healing, we really focus on how do we bring the oneness and our understanding of universal laws and principles to bear on this particular thing, and what false belief or sense of separation could be manifesting here. So it's a little different than Louise Hay's work. They work beautifully in tandem with each other. I highly recommend that you use both of them. But I want you to know that's coming up in the next section on physical perfection. It's cleverly called Chapter 15, Physical Perfection Continued. All right, so I'm going to stop there. That's sort of the opening the opening context for these conversations. They're incredibly important. We will go back to the beginning of the chapter. And so this is an opportunity for you to chime in, to share, respond, ask a question. So I'm going to check in with Ryan, and he's going to remind you how to do that and see if there's something to share already. Hi, Ryan.
Hi, Petra. It's good to have you back
here
in the land of make-believe. So, if you're watching us live here on Facebook, I put the Zoom link in the comment section, so if you want to go ahead and jump on over, or if you have a question or comment, feel free to write it in there and I can read it aloud in the room here myself with you, Petra, and Richard. I can't exclude Richard from this. If you're already here in the Zoom room, you can hit the raise your hand icon, or you can always put your chat inside of the comments as well, and I'll read them aloud. Also, I just want to mention that anonymity is our friend here, so feel free to just express yourself, ask any questions, and we will go ahead and just get started. So would anybody like to raise their hand, ask a question or comment?
Make a comment. Otherwise, we shall carry on and begin. I'm just so happy to be back with you guys. Holy mackerel is my favorite thing. All right.
So one of the comments that I've come across, it says, I agree with Louise Hay, and that illness is emotional, and with Science of Mind, I succeeded in physically healing myself of cancer, and that was 35 years ago. Yeah. So congratulations to you on that.
And thank you for sharing that. Yes, one of the things Louise Hay does really well is to show how... See, the thing is, we're going to talk about this in a minute. We don't necessarily get a disease or an illness because we're thinking about getting the disease or the illness, because we're thinking, oh, I'm going to get cancer. We could open ourselves up to that. But often, if we will listen to how we describe our ailments, we'll actually see that it is our body reflecting back to us how we are experiencing life. And it's something that we can begin to take responsibility for in a really powerful way. And Louise Hay really, really pulls together those relationships. Now, it's not 100% because we're not all exactly the same, but it's a good, dead on, right on, 75 to 80% of the time. So it's always worth going there. Ryan, did I see you have a hand up?
Yeah. I wanted to read one of the comments.
Great.
Actually, it's a question that came in. I have two of them for you. Okay, so the first one says, is spiritual healing instantaneously, or is it a process? And it goes on further to say, does a physical or emotion healing become whole over time, or can it be instantaneous? Something just like a here, right now experience.
Yes, and yes. So I think that we, what do I want to say about that? Absolutely can heal instantaneously. Part of the challenge with that is that when we don't, we think there's something wrong. If our illness or our experience is the product of a long set of repeated ideas that we have unconsciously bought into and believed, can take time for that belief system to be reversed. And that's the time that a healing can take. When that belief system is deeply reversed, where the healed thought becomes the norm, at that point, instant healing happens. And it's really actually instantaneous at that point. But the change in consciousness can actually take time. On the other hand, we have been so seduced by the scientific facts of the matter that some of us don't believe that instantaneous healing is possible. And therefore we don't expect it, and so we don't experience it. So I have been a part of and have experienced both of these things. The one thing that I do know is that it doesn't matter whether it's instantaneous or takes time. The healing happens, and the healing is possible, and the healing happens. I will add one other caveat, and that is the instant nature of healing is often directly related to how terminal the illness or the issue is. When we believe we're going to die or afraid we're going to die from whatever it is, that is a powerful focusing agent. And most of the instantaneous healings that I've experienced, seen or been a part of have been at that place because people are spending all of their spiritual work on healing. When it's something that's not quite that in your face, chronic or low grade, or just kind of going on, or coming and going and coming and going, it's easy to get distracted. It's easy to not be as focused on the spiritual work. And so sometimes that causes it to take longer. Most of the instantaneous healings I've seen, not all of them, but many of them have to do with when it was really facing a terminal crisis. But even that, I don't necessarily want to affirm that for you or for anybody else. Okay, I think I've said enough about that. So the answer is yes and yes. It can be instantaneous and it can take time. And Ryan, you said you had another one.
Yeah, I do, and then I want to bring Dennis into the room.
Great.
Okay, so the question is, and I'm just kind of going to paraphrase this a little bit. When we say there's a difference between healing and a cure, is this a valid point when physical cure seems not to be viable or forthcoming, yet healing can occur on the levels of other consciousness?
Yes, absolutely, which is sometimes why when we do our spiritual work for somebody and for somebody who is in fact terminal, they can die. And it may be that such a deep healing has occurred that that death is no longer feared, that it's actually time for that person to move on. See, the biggest problem I think we have is that we've made death a medical event, and we've made it something to be fought at all costs, as if death were a failure. But we don't necessarily know what it is that we're here to do or accomplish or be or become, or how our lives are designed to impact others. And so who's to say that an early death is a bad thing for the person who dies? Of course, there's grief and challenge for people who are left behind. There's just no question about it. But we are going to leave this physical plane because there's other things for us to be doing, more growth on other planes and of consciousness. And so one of the deepest healings is if we recognize that we are part of the whole and that life is eternal, then death is no longer something we fight or fear. What we want to do is live. And what we want to do are heal those things which keep us from living, and examine why we are manifesting things that keep us from living. And yes, we can. So I just want to tell a story. One of the most healed and whole people I know was a practitioner of ours who was in a wheelchair. So at 19, she had a horrific car accident. She was paralyzed from the waist down. She was a metaphysician even at that point. She spent 10 years saying, well, if I can heal myself, then if healing is possible, then I can heal myself. She spent 10 years sitting in her bed trying to make her big toe work, twitch, and healing all of that somehow. And she found that after 10 years of that work, she felt like she had wasted those 10 years, that she was actually still a whole person, regardless of the fact that physically she was seated in a wheelchair, that was now part of her wholeness, that her being, her spirit, her ability to live and have life had not been diminished, it had just changed. And she shared about a moment of healing that came when she said, you know what, this is it. And she went on to be a practitioner with us and was truly one of the most whole people, because, we think of wholeness as exclusively physical. If there's something physically wrong with me, then I'm not whole. But wholeness has to do with our being, and it has to do with our engagement with life, and it has to do with the way in which we take up life. And you've seen the YouTube videos of the way in which people who seem physically unwhole, physically either mentally challenged, emotionally challenged, or physically challenged, have actually gone on to create powerful and whole lives. And so healing doesn't necessarily mean that something is going to magically change or magically be different. We also, however, don't want to use that as an excuse to resign ourselves. Resignation is not living. Resignation and settling is not a healing. A healing is a deep and powerful move into life, right? And I saw her move into life in this amazing way as a person in a wheelchair, utterly undiminished by the fact that she was confined to a wheelchair. Really extraordinary. It was a huge spiritual lesson for me. And so these are why this conversation, besides how do we heal, can we heal, those kinds of things, it's a much more nuanced conversation than we usually hear. We often hear it talked about in very cut and dried, black and white terms. You're either healed or you're not. You're either doing it right or you're not. You're either, and each one of us, it's our life. It's our healing. It's our experience of life. And nobody, doctor, family member, friend, has a right to tell us what that should be or how that should look. That is our choice and then our work to do. It's a great question. We usually focus more on the fact that what we want to do is have a consciousness of a healed life so we don't have to keep curing things. Curing the headache, curing the overweight, curing the this thing and that thing. The back problem, and then we have to cure the neck problem, and then we have to cure do you see what I'm saying, right? And we've had that experience, many of us, where it sort of just kind of moves around. Every 3 years, we're having to cure some new thing that has sort of mysteriously manifested itself. And so what that means is we're not healing the underlying thing, which might actually have nothing to do with our back or our neck or our head, might have everything to do with our stress, our inability to engage with our lives from a spiritual point of view, a healthy, whole, sane way of engaging with our lives. And so that then becomes the healing. Myself personally, when I really began working on healing my stress and healing my belief that I wasn't supported, that was a 5-year project. Healing my belief that I wasn't supported. Surprise, surprise, how many physical ailments disappeared when I started healing my chronic stress, which was fundamentally premised on the fact that I'm not supported. I have to do everything myself. I have to make it happen. I have to make it work. Do you see? Do you see the relationship? All of those, and there's tons and tons of studies that show how many physical ailments, they're real. It's not like they're psychosomatic, like you're making them up. They're absolutely real symptoms and real experiences, but underneath that is either an unhealthy lifestyle or too much stress. And it manifests itself in all of these different things. So when we talk about healing and cure, right, you can go to the doctor and get the neck cured and then the back cured and then the headaches cured, but things keep reoccurring and moving around because the underlying stress hasn't been healed. And the underlying belief that causes that stress hasn't been healed. When those things are healed, then all of these other things simply cease to exist. They don't need to manifest themselves anymore. So that's kind of how healing and cure relate to each other. I hope that's helpful. All right, I'm going to check in with you, Ryan. I think you said you were going to bring somebody into the room.
Yeah, Dennis, do you want to go ahead and unmute yourself?
Hi, Dennis.
Hi, good morning. Hey, I just wanted, very interesting subject for me. I just wanted to comment on the instantaneous healing versus taking time because I really walked through this. I've shared this in class before, starting about 2 years back. Okay, number one, 9 years of practicing science of mind, and I'm still working on this aspect. Mm-hmm. Other things like things that held me back emotionally, all that's. I mean, in fact, I was reminiscing about or thinking back on that just the other day about wow, the changes that have occurred in 8 years with mind treatment.
I love that.
But when it comes to physical healing, I'm challenged with, well, not really challenged, but it's, I have to be conscious of this dance between the absolute and the relative. That's what I call it.
Yes.
Okay, like I've shared this in class before, I went through major dental procedure almost 2 years ago. It was just shy of reconstructive surgery. And I have firm belief that, okay, once the surgeon did his part, he created the healing environment. It's done. It's done. No matter how I feel, no matter the throbbing, whatever, I kept focusing on it's done. It's healed. The healing is complete. And the whole procedure for healing is estimated to take 4 to 5 months. Well, of course, I went back in a week and took x-ray and he said, good, you're doing okay. Well, then I went back in 2 months and he was stunned. I still remember, he goes, it appears as if it's healed.
Yes.
Of course, he made me wait 4 months.
Right, because they can't believe it.
So even though it wasn't an instantaneous healing, my take on it is because I focused on the spiritual aspect of it, it is done.
Yes.
I mean, just period.
Yes. And go ahead.
So I healed faster.
Yes.
No, so I healed faster.
Absolutely. And I think that's really important to underscore. Super important to underscore. Karen had the same experience. She was told her ankle wouldn't be healed for 8 to 10 weeks. At 4 weeks, they took the x-rays, and he was like, well, we can't even see the fracture anymore. And that's we don't want to minimize that is using our spiritual work in support of the surgery. And countless people have had that experience where the recovery is so much more effortless and so much shorter. So thank you for sharing that, Dennis, because that is, I think, a profound example of how the physical and the spiritual work go together. That's really awesome. Thank you so much. All right. Did we have another one, Ryan?
Yeah, I do have one more. Catherine, do you want to go ahead and unmute yourself?
Hi, Catherine.
Are you here with us, Catherine? Did you accidentally unmute yourself? I think Catherine's taking a break to figure out what she wanted to say. So please continue.
Good. Well, these are the questions, and you can see from Dennis's sharing that again there's a nuanced understanding. If we end up having surgery, or we end up breaking something, or we end up with some physical condition, we do not have to rely on the doctor's prognosis, right? The diagnosis is good. You need something with your jaws, you need this surgery, that's the diagnosis. And why not? There's allopathic medicine is fabulous in a crisis and for surgeries. if you really need them. So you need that surgery, have it. And then the spiritual work is the support of how effortlessly all of that then takes place. No complications, perfect recovery, something. And the prognosis is what the doctors think the end result will be, right? Which is why we don't take terminal prognosis seriously. We don't take, it's going to take this long to get over it seriously. I was told when I was in 19 or 20 years old, I was given a bottle of pills for the pain in my neck and back, and I was told, there's really nothing we can do. You're going to be on these pain pills for the rest of your life until you're in your 50s and 60s, and you'll probably end up with back surgery, you need your neck fused, those kinds of things, all of which my mother had. I said, no, I don't think so. And so I don't have any of those issues and haven't for 25 years, 30 years. And so the idea that it's either instantaneous or it's not spiritual, the idea that it's either spiritual so we can't have surgery or we shouldn't take the pill, right? People get afraid of their medication. And so our spiritual work isn't, well, I'm just going to abandon the medication. We work in tandem with it. We do the spiritual work that says my body only takes from the medication what it needs, and everything else it passes through. No side effects necessary. Not everybody gets side effects. They just horrify us with the side effects. And then we buy into it and we become afraid of it. Oh my God, I'm going to have these side effects. No, there's no reason to have those. There's no need to have those, right? We do our spiritual work and then we continue with the underlying with high blood pressure and diabetes and these chronic things. What's the underlying lifestyle or stress or that we can work on healing so that our need for the medication diminishes and diminishes. We may never get off of it. Well, if that's what's needed, then that's what's needed, right? If I were in an accident and I lost my leg, I would spend the rest of my life either with a prosthetic leg or with a crutch. But I am still wholly me. So if I need insulin for the rest of my life, right, I'm going to do all the spiritual work to absolutely align myself with the healthiest lifestyle, that I don't want anything that isn't good for my body. I don't eat anything that isn't good for my body. I love to do the things that are good for my body. And if what I need is that little bit of insulin to make sure that my system is operating properly, great, bless it. So that's the other thing. Anything that we resist or hate or fear is not going to have a healing effect on our bodies. So we have to bless our doctors and the supplements and the medications and the surgeries and the anesthesiologist and the Reiki and the massage and all of bless it all to our good. And really affirming that only that which is needed for my healing is taken in, and that which is not needed for my healing is passed out. The other spiritual work that is in alignment with that is to do deep spiritual work to trust our bodies, because our bodies have spiritual awareness, right? Our bodies aren't separate from the spiritual reality. They're the way spiritual reality is embodied, is made physical. So this is spiritual too. So it has its own intelligence and it has its own wisdom. I will tell you that in the last 30 years, the biggest work I've had to do around my own physical healing is to listen to my body. What do you want to eat? Should I take this medication? How does this supplement feel to me? I shouldn't be eating this food, not because I have an allergy to it or an intolerance to it, but my body says, yeah, not so much, it's not so good. Did I instantly get off it? No, it took me 5 years to get off sugar. Off, on, right? What did I do? I did not beat myself up for it. And I did not say I couldn't do it. I just every time got off sugar longer and longer and longer periods of time, and every time I had sugar again, my body would be like, are you kidding me? Really? Can't you feel how it feels in your body when you take sugar? No. And now I have an almost sugar-free diet. And because I learned to listen to my body. Now my body right now is screaming at me, move more, move more, move more, move more. So that's what I'm working on. I'm listening to that need. And if I don't, my body will manifest symptoms to show me what is happening because I'm not moving it, because I'm not caring for it. While it is spirit in form, it is actually in form. And if I don't change the oil in my car, or give it the right kind of gas, or take it in for its regular service, do the spark plugs and the carburetor and whatever else all the electronic stuff is it needs, it will stop running. And no matter how much I lay my hands on it or say spiritual words over it, it is actually a physical machine and needs maintenance. This does too. Our physical bodies need maintenance. And they deserve it, because the other side of that coin is, let's think about this. Yes, you can in fact live on a bean a day. The people who did that, that's all they focused on. They were spiritual aesthetics. You can actually go into the snow, take off all your clothes, and have the snow melt around you. Yeah, documented, you can do that. You can have that much control over your body. What do those people do every day? They meditate every day. They live in a monastery. They don't work. They don't have children. They don't have outside lives. That's what they're doing. They're spending all of their mental and spiritual coin learning that kind of control over their bodies. And yes, actually, then you can do that. So my take on it is, if I'm not spending a lot of mental and spiritual coin having to heal my body, if I'm taking care of my body at the physical and emotional levels, then I have all that mental and spiritual coin left over to create a life, to care for my granddaughter, to participate and co-create here at CSLDallas. Do you see what I'm saying? To manifest the other things in my life, because I'm not solely focused on the amount of work it takes to heal my sense of separation in the physical body and allows me to melt snow. If you want to do that, absolutely, you can do that. No question about it. But it will take that kind of focus and intention, right? And so these are the things that we get to then be honest with ourselves and take responsibility for. Am I willing to give that kind of attention and focus to healing? Or am I going to just keep doing what I've always been doing and hope it will somehow magically get better? So we're going to close this morning by reminding ourselves that our work for physical perfection comes from deep spiritual truths and universal principles. It does not rely on magical thinking. It does not rely on denying that there might, in fact, be something wrong, that something showed up somewhere on a test or we had an experience that is now manifesting in our bodies. We don't deny that. What we do is we apply spiritual truth and principle to it. So we're going to spend the next few weeks really diving into that. Thank you for your comments and questions. I'm so happy to be back with all of you, with Richard, with Ryan, and I look forward to seeing you again next week. Please carry on reading this beginning portion of Physical Perfection, Chapter 14 in the Science of Mind. We'll see you in our Sunday celebration. We'll see you on Wednesday night. We'll see you in the classes that are starting. All kinds of great things coming up. Have a beautiful and blessed Sunday. Bye for now.